Sakshi, remind me about this at the end of lecture, right? So I'll take this one there. Take एक बार. All right. ठीक है. So guys, what have we learned so far? Let's quickly list them out. So HTML, we have learned CSS, and we have learned JS, right? हमने ये कर लिया. Everyone, right? Have you done anything else? और कुछ भी किया है कि बस इतना ही किया है अभी के लिए? We have learned Git also. All right, that's fair. Take. So basically, if you guys remember that very first slide that I used to show you guys, which had like structure and let me just quickly share this, and let's go back in. Take. So we discussed something which said that there is web development, right? Web development. And this web development was divided into two broad categories. कौन सी categories थी वो? If you guys remember, दो broad category. Front end and back end, right? So we had front end and we had back end, right? Or more of client side and server side. Makes sense? Client side and server side, right? So whatever we are able to see, that is basically our front end. So let's say we are visiting Flipkart. This is our front end, right? Now in this front end, we can see that we have a structure that is maintained. So navbar is there, then there are these boxes. Inside these boxes, there are little boxes. So what tool that we have learned deals with these things? Let me make this a bit smaller. So basically structure कौन handle करता है? Structure. So we have learned that HTML, for now, HTML handles it, right? Or rather markup language बोलते तो it would have been more better, and I'm gonna use arrow only. ठीक. Then we learned कि our display was handled by which part out of these three? Right? CSS, right? CSS. So this thing was being handled by our CSS. And last but not least, why do we need JS then? Job structure and display is handled. Let's say if I want to search something, right? Let's say if I'm writing mobiles, should I be getting only these mobiles? Right? If I put some input, I should get some response. Yes. So basically, I can boil that process down to user interaction. Right? Users should be able to interact with websites, right? Or rather, you guys have said it, function, right? So website function कर रहा है, that is the property of our JS, right? So अभी तक we have learned these two together, so styling and display, and these individually, right? So basically we have learned them in two different sets. Today what we're gonna do is we're gonna interact them both. तो हम HTML को JS के साथ interact करवाएंगे and we'll see how that happens, right? So first thing first, let me go back to this and let me create one folder which is going to be called our let's call it project one, right? And in this I'm gonna have my index.html file, right? What was the code or emit code for getting the template? HTML का template कैसे मिलता है? Remember people, याद है? How do I get the template? Okay, so I'm gonna write this and I'm gonna do a tab. ठीक, so I have this HTML data, right? Let's say if I want to add CSS to it, how can I do that? For now, let's go with embedded internal के साथ जा रहे हैं. What was the tag for it? Style tag. Everyone सबको याद है, right? So we had a certain tag that was called style tag, right? उसी तरीके से for JS to be handled in a document of HTML, we have a tag which is called script. Makes sense कि JavaScript लिखना है तो we have a tag which is called script, or rather a scripting language. ठीक ठीक. So usually जब हम, let's say I'm writing a JS in here, right? I was able to run a terminal and I was able to get the results of these things, whatever, let's say I'm writing console.log a hello world. So I was getting these results in my terminal, right? Everyone, terminal में मिल रहा था, right? But do you guys open terminals in original websites? जब websites पे जाते हो, if you click something, do they open terminal and show you the results? No, right? It's the web page only. ठीक? So all we have to do is we have to just put it inside our script tag. ठीक? Now let's say if I want a heading in this body tag, let me just close it. Let me just close it. Let's say I want a heading in this one. So let's say I'm writing h1 tag, and in this I'm writing heading 1. How do we run a HTML file? HTML file को कैसे run करते थे? Should I press this? Live? All right, let's go live and let's see what happens. All right, we are on the page. We are seeing this heading 1, but we don't have any idea where this console.log is, right? So for this, what we have to do is we have to press right click and go to inspect, right? Inspect pe aaya. Can you guys see any option where it says कि it might print something? कोई भी option है which you think might print something? Console, right? So if I click on console, are we seeing hello world here? Right, right. So if you are creating an HTML document, you can add JS in it by writing a script tag, right? And us script tag mein you can go and do your own JS. So let's say I have a variable let a equals to 10 and I have a variable let b equals to 20, and I'm doing console.log a plus b. What should I get? What should I get? What are we expecting that we are going to get? Are we expecting 30 or are we expecting 10, 20? एक string है plus there is a plus sign. That thumb rule of concatenation. Check. So if I go back, I'm getting that, right? ठीक है. So this is JS and this is HTML. They are still separate. Similar क्या है? So now the purpose of DOM will actually come in place. ठीक है. So DOM की full form पता है क्या किसी को? Anyone knows the full form of DOM? What does DOM means? Let me just zoom it out a bit. Chalo. Document object model, right? So it's basically equals to document object model, right? So it's nothing but like DOM. Okay, just give me a second. Someone's at it. 1 second. Yeah. So like DOM is nothing but it's a programming interface, right? Interface matlab it's a tech which basically converts HTML, or which we can document, उसको हम document भी बोल सकते हैं, document into iteratable JS, iteratable objects. Take, let's try to understand what does this means. So let's say I'm creating a structure in here which says div, right? And this div is gonna have let's say 2 sections, right? So it has 2 sections, and in this section, in this one I'm gonna have heading. So h1 and heading 1, and in this one I'm gonna have h2, or rather h1 here, but this will be called heading 2, right? Let's keep it h2. Check. So now what DOM is gonna do is, DOM is nothing but जो browser है ना, which you are seeing here, it's gonna get compiled in that way that this document is gonna get converted into an object model. Take, so if I take this piece of code, let's take it from HTML itself. Take, so let's take it from HTML itself, and in here, if I place it, so DOM क्या करेगा? DOM क्या करेगा? It's gonna take this and this. Take. So it's gonna take this stuff and it's gonna divide it into a DOM tree. ठीक, so it's gonna create a document object. तो सबसे टॉप पे और सबसे पेरेंट एलिमेंट क्या है इस पूरे डॉक्यूमेंट में? सबसे पेरेंट एलिमेंट इज इट HTML, राइट? तो इट्स गोना हैव HTML. ठीक, उसके अंदर क्या क्या आता है? So we have two things under HTML, right? We have a head and we have a body, right? Head के अंदर क्या क्या है? So we have multiple tags, but overall, let's say we have meta and we have title, right? We also have, for the sake of space, I'm gonna write it here. We also have style, right? Similarly, body में क्या क्या है? Body में क्या क्या है? We have a div body के अंदर, and that div is divided into two different sections, right? Two different sections. So basically इसके अंदर we are gonna keep on creating these branches, है ना? जैसे जैसे नेस्ट कर रहा है वैसे वैसे हम लोग ब्रांचेस क्रिएट करते जाएंगे. So isn't this sort of tree representation? ट्री की तरह रिप्रेजेंटेशन हो रहा है, राइट? सो दिस इज नथिंग बट इट्स कॉल्ड डॉम ट्री, राइट? और डॉम क्या करता है इसमें? इट क्रिएट्स दिस स्ट्रक्चर सो दैट वी कैन एक्सेस देम. एक्सेस का मतलब, लेट्स से think of a TV and a remote, right? So let's say I have this TV and I have a remote, right? This has two buttons. One is to on it, or rather पिछले channel पे जाने के लिए. So and other one is for the next one, right? So if I want to go to next channel, should I press this button? इस बटन को प्रेस करना पड़ेगा, right? So when I'm pressing this button now, मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ? I'm trying to interact with this TV. ठीक, उसी तरीके से in websites, if I go and if I try to press some button, right? Let's say I'm pressing this one. So I'm trying to interact with this website. If I'm clicking on add to cart, I'm interacting with this website, right? So it should be able to access it, right? Like the JS code should be able to access these things, right? So DOM basically उसको accessible बना. ठीक है, so वो accessible कैसे बनाता है? Let me show you here. So if you click on elements, no, after you have written something, you're going to get a basic DOM structure, like document object model structure of your entire document, right? So सबसे ऊपर we have our HTML tag, which contains two different things. One is head and one is body. ठीक? And if I click on head, I'm going to see whatever extra elements we have inside that head tag. So we have meta, we have title, we have style, right? If I click on body, let me just close this head. And if I click on body, I'm going to see my div, right? Or div ke andar, we have, if I click on div further, we have two different sections. And in sections, we can keep on going, right? We can keep on going. So this is basically a document object representation of this. वो ज़्यादा विजिबल कैसे होगा? We can access this document, right? उसने जो DOM बनाया है हमारे ब्राउजर ने, we can access it by doing document का console. So if I do console.log document, right? You see this thing, document, right? So let's go and check out what this document actually holds, right? So we have a document and this document holds, क्या hold कर रहा है? It's holding your HTML, right? तो जो पूरे पेज पे हमने जो भी कोड लिखा है, इट्स जस्ट होल्डिंग दैट, राइट? So let's say if I want to access one of these things, how can I access something via DOM, right? If you want to change the channel, you should be able to access this button, right? A button should be there to at least go back or forth. Make sense or not? Right? So first thing is finding this button, then next will be pressing that button. So how do we access those elements, right? Let's say I want to access this heading one. How can I get it in my JavaScript? By using this document or DOM that we have learned about. So how we can do it is we have few things which can help us accessing them. So let's say first thing first, let me give it an ID. So let's say I have an ID which says header element, right? So I'm going to create a variable, let header equals to, I'm going to access my document, right? So मैं document को access करूंगा and I'm going to search for this ID. So what I'll do is I'll write a command which says get element, and can you see these many commands? We have get element by ID, we have get element by class name, we have get elements by name, we have get elements by tag name and all, right? First, let's go with get element by ID, right? Once you have written this, can you guys see कि ये document किस तरीके का structure है? What type of structure is it? Let's say I have an object, right? And this object has a key one, which has a value one, right? Value one. How can I access this value one? I'll have to do obj.key1, right? Am I not doing something like this in here? Document के साथ I'm doing document.get element by ID, right? Yes, correct, Harshit. So basically, what JS का compiler is doing, or rather browser क्या कर रहा है? It's converting this entire HTML page into a object which is called document, right? And this object is accessible. This object में there is a method which is called get element by ID, right? So as I told you guys, this is a method. तो method की क्या property होती है? How do I know कि something is a method? Does it has a parenthesis? Right? And we need to pass some arguments. What argument, can you guys guess ki what argument might this be? We have to basically find the element inside my document. And I'm writing get element by ID. Should we write the ID name? Makes sense, right? So I'm going to put that ID name in here real quick. So if I just copy this and if I paste this, I'm going to put that ID name here. And abhi main kya karunga? I'm just going to do a console.log of this header, right? And let's see what we are getting in our console. So let's go, and what do we have? Do we have that element? Are we capturing this element? Right? Right? And this thing is also an object. We can further access it by writing header dot. I mean, there are a few more things, but let's start with inner text, right? So header के अंदर we are trying to check कि what is the text inside these two tags by writing something which is called inner text. Easy है? I mean, it's really vague कि क्या है definition, right? So let's go and check if we are getting the text inside it. Are we getting it? Right? So are we able to access the HTML inside our JavaScript? JavaScript में are we starting to get our HTML and all? Right? So do okay, let me do one thing. Can you just quickly tell me how I can, let's say I am giving this section an ID, right? So if I give it section 2, how can I access this section? Can you guys quickly write it in chat? Yeah, Sharon, just coming to that only. That's why I just wrote this. So can you guys please respond if how can I access this section? just this section. Right? So basically document dot get element by ID and section 2, right? But what if I have multiple H1 tags, right? I have multiple H1 tags. Let's say this is called heading 2, and for not getting you guys confused, I'm gonna comment this heading 4. Okay, and let's have one more H1 tag, and this one is gonna be heading. All right, and let's update this, or rather, let's give it a class, right? So class, and let's call it section. Yeah, under H1 one, right? Or rather, just this, and let me just copy this class, and let me just paste it. Right. All right. For now, if I do get document by element ID and I'm writing this and I'm writing inner text, which element am I gonna just get? I'm just gonna get line number 18th one element, right? Just that one. Take, but let's say I want to access all of these. Should I go with something that was there which said, let me just call it headers, right? Capital S, and I'm writing document dot get. Let me write get element. Can you guys think of anything which I can pick from here? Right? Right? So you guys think I should go with class name? Right? So let's go with class name. And in here, I'm going to keep and get section H1. Before that, tell me if I try to access this headers, how many element I'm going to access? Three elements access karunga, right? So I'm going to access 3 elements by writing an object ka key, or rather method. So let's say I have this second key, right? I have this second key, key 2, and this one has value 1 and value 2 and value 3. Is this correct way of writing multiple values in a same key? Right? Am I gonna get an error if I try to do obj.key2? Right? What can be possible way for storing multiple values in same place? Just the values. Array, array, array makes sense. Array makes sense. I mean, you guys are only telling me. So if I go and create an array, and if I just add these commas in here, will I be able to access these values very easily by doing an object.key2? Right? So let's see what we're gonna get if I do console.log headers, right? And let me just comment this one out for me. If we go back, what can we see? It says HTML collection, and it says कि इसका length है 3. So if I try to expand this one, can you guys see what's the length of this thing? Is it 3? Everyone, is it 3? Right? So is that correct? We have 3 different headers, right? We have 3 different headers with similar class, section H1, section H1, section H1, right? So that's what we are getting, and it's gonna be in form of your JS, JS बोल रहा हूँ, arrays, right? So let's say I want to access the inner text. So what do you guys think? How will I be able to access the inner text? If I write inner text, will it make sense to access the inner text of an array? Array का inner text access करना, will it make sense? If I go, I'm getting undefined. Right? Achha, can you guys think कि we can do this? obj.key2 dot value. ऐसा कुछ करे, will this make sense? Or rather, उस specific चीज को पकड़ लेंगे. So we are gonna get the value. Right? Right? So we're gonna do just that. We're gonna go and write headers के अंदर 0th element the inner text, right? So which is the 0th element in that multiple headers? Is it heading 1? Heading 1, right? So let's go and try to see what we're getting. क्या मिल रहा है? heading 1, right? What if I go and write headers 1 kind of text? Now what am I gonna get? heading 2, heading 2 makes sense, right? And if I do 3, what am I gonna get? Undefined, right? Right, so yeah, we are getting undefined. So we are basically getting an array from our document when there are multiple things, right? And there's a queue. जब हम document get element by id कर रहे थे, we were doing get element by id, right? Whereas for other cases we are gonna see we are gonna get elements by class, right? उसी तरीके से let's say if I'm trying to access tags access कर रहा हूँ, so if I go and do let tag select equals to document dot get element by tag name, and in there if I write the tag, what's the tag that we want? h1. So let's see what we're gonna get if I do console.log tag select, right? So we already know, let me just clear this one out so that we don't get error again, and let's go back. We are getting again a error, right? So let me sort few things out real quick. So let's say I have a HTML element, right? It's div, right? It's div. Let's make it large. It's div, and इस div के अंदर we have two different sections, right? So we have two different sections. So this is section and this is other section. And इस section के अंदर we have two different h1 tags. So we have h1, we have h1, and we have h2, and we have h3. उसी तरीके से this one has just one, let's call it button. ठीक है? So now this is gonna get converted into DOM once our document goes live, right? वो DOM में convert करने का काम browser का है. We don't do anything. All we do is access this DOM, right? But is this thing getting converted into DOM as soon as we are opening our live server? Everyone, right? So जैसे ही ये DOM में convert होता है ना, this thing where intersections are there, right? जो यहाँ पे if we go here, we have head के अंदर we have these things, then body के अंदर we have these things. So I'm just representing one single part of that. Let's say I have a div and उसके अंदर I have two different sections, and this section contains 3 different heading tags, 4, right? So once there are more than one item, no, that thing gets converted into something that is called list, right? And this particular stuff, this thing is gonna get called node, right? उसी तरीके से when there is an intersection, let's say this thing is gonna get divided into 3 different h1 or h2 or h3 tags. So this is again gonna be a node, right? Right? So I'm just giving you guys some technical terms. समझ आ रहा है? समझ आ रहा है? All right. So let me create few trees and you guys tell me what's node and what's not. So let's say I have body, that's all, right? So let me just mark it as 1. Take I have body, that's all. Then for second one, I have body, and inside body I have div, and this div has 2 h1 and h2 tags. Okay. Then back again we have third, which has body. उसके अंदर we have div, and that div has section, and that section ठीक है, अभी इतना ही रखते हैं. So I'm gonna create DOM something like this. So I have body, Do I have something else below this? इसके नीचे कुछ भी है? No. So this thing is gonna remain just like this. ठीक है? Let's have body again. Body, this thing has a div, and that div has two different things, which is h1 and h2. Right? Let's create a DOM tree of this. So we have a body, right? This body has a div, and this div has a section. Right? Any nodes in here? यहाँ पे कोई भी node है? Right? ठीक. तो guys, even though there are no more partitions, इस particular चीज को we are gonna call node. एक बार कोई चीज is there in your DOM, it's gonna be node. ठीक. तो this is still a node. बस अकेला है, it's individual. Right? It does not has any partitions. Does this thing, again, by that logic, can it be called node? Yes. Yes, it's gonna be called node. Is this gonna be called node? Yes, it will be. Then what about these two? They will be, right? Every element is gonna be node, but there is one more term which differentiates between these elements, right? So let's say if I'm just focusing on this node for now, how many children node does this have? This node has children node kitne? Two children node, right? So I can say ki two children node. How many parent node it has? I mean, at any time, is this thing gonna have two node, two parent nodes? एक ही होगा, right? Parent node is always gonna be one. ठीक. So this is clear. ये है parent node, and this thing is child node. Why I taught you? These are only technical terms. You won't need them. What you'll need is, once there is a node which has divisions, right? So let's say it has h1 and it has h2. This division is gonna be created as an array inside your DOM. We have already seen that in our class name and tag name. So itna clear hai ki if a node has some divisions, that thing is gonna get converted into an array by DOM. Right? And this thing has a name. We don't call it array, we call them node list. ठीक. So they just want you guys to be aware about these terms. ठीक. So clear hai what we are gonna call node list and all. Right? So going forward, if I ask you guys, let's say I have a div, right? And that div has like, let's say it has a section, it has two different section, and this section has h1 and h2 tag, and this one has one div and a button, right? So if I ask you guys, div node or this div, how many, what's the length of the node list that this div holds? What will be the length? Node list ka. Will it be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or will it be just 2? Just 2, right? So immediate child jo bhi hoga na, that will be its node list, right? So what will be the node list of this second section? Again 2. ठीक है? So guys, just these few theoretical terms clear hai aapko, everyone? What is node, what is node list and all? Take. So let's say I have a HTML tag which says I have body, and inside that body I have a div. Inside that div I have I have two things. I have an image, and I have, I mean, this thing is gonna be its sibling. So image ke saath I have a h1, right? And this div ends here. So div ends here. Then I have another div which has section, right? And this section has a h1, right? So is this thing called a document? ये चीज document कहलाता है, right? So this is on VS Code. This is on VS Code. Now, once we open it on browser पे खोलेंगे. So this thing is gonna convert it into what? What? DOM tree. DOM tree में convert हो जाएगा, right? Or you can call it an object, that's fine. That's fine. And that object का name क्या है? Document, right? We were able to access everything by this document object. Yes, everyone, right? And ये चीज it's gonna create DOM tree in this fashion, right? So we have body and body के अंदर we have two div tags. So we'll have two different div tags, and this one is gonna have node list of image and h1, and this one is gonna have a section, and this section is gonna have h1. So if someone asks you that I'm giving you a document and you have to create a DOM tree, can you guys create this? I mean, it's very easy stuff. DOM tree create karna. All you have to do is you have to just think about the relations and you can go on creating this DOM tree. Right? Okay. So DOM tree is clear. Then what's like, let's say I'm picking this one. What will this be called? Node. तो इसका क्या इसका मतलब है कि then other things won't be called node. Let's say I'm picking this. Will it be called a node? Right? It's still a node, right? But if we are starting to talk in relation or in respect of something, right? Let's say I'm talking in relation with body only. So then if I consider these two divs, will they be called node or node list in relation with body? Node list, right? And what's node list? What's the data structure of node list? It's an array. It's an array. Right? Okay. So going back, once we have accessed every element which has a tag of h1, this tag is going to be an array. This tag select is going to be an array then. Everyone, array hoga, right? So do you guys think if I run a for loop on it for let I equals to 0, I is less than tag select dot length and I plus plus, and if I do console dot log tag select I dot inner text, am I gonna get each and every inner text h1, h2 and h3? This should be a viable thing given that I'm telling you guys openly कि ये चीज एक array, right? Let's go and check that out. So if we go in console, are we getting that? Right? So clear है कि node list is nothing but an array, right? So node list or an array. Right? And this is also clear how we can access them. ठीक, एक छोटी सी बात बताता हूँ, you're gonna remember it for your entire programming journey. ठीक, so there are few operations in programming which are called CRUD. Have you guys heard about CRUD ever? CRUD. Okay. So this thing is your short form for something which is called create, update, create, read, update and delete. Remember जब हमने object सीखा था, have we learned each and everything? How do we create an object? How do we read or access an object? How do we update an object and how do we delete something from an object? Right? Have we done the same with our arrays? Right? So data structures maybe we have learned CRUD. By that logic, are we gonna do CRUD on our DOM? Given that DOM is an object. Right? So that ye remember rakhna, you're gonna follow this system many times, right? So when you're creating databases and all, you're gonna again create CRUD. When you're creating front end, you will know you will have to deal with CRUD. For now, by doing this get element by ID, class name, tag name, what are we doing? Are we creating? Are we accessing? Are we updating or are we deleting? Are we accessing? Read कर रहे हैं, access कर रहे हैं, just consoling, printing and all, right? So for now, we'll be accessing only. I'll be giving you a brief hint about updating, and tomorrow's lecture में we'll see कि how we can create and delete also. Okay, but for now, let's go with this. First, let's complete our access, right? So mainly we are gonna access our document by doing this create get element by ID, class name and tag name. But do you guys think these are too many things to remember? कुछ ज्यादा ही चीजें हैं याद करने के लिए? No. अच्छा, you'll have to think like that only. अगर चीजें 2 से 3 हो रही है ना, you'll have to think it's too much. ठीक है? So let's say switch blade देखा है. I mean I'm not sure if I'm calling it correct or not, but Swiss knife देखा है कि किसी ने? So let's say we have a knife, right? And we have a nail cutter, right? Just imagine that this thing is nail cutter, right? ये nail cutter है guys. And और क्या होता है switch blade Swiss knife में? We have that corkscrew, right? We have these different things. Just think about it as element, get element by ID, right? Class name, and we have one more thing, which was tag name. Take, what if I tell you guys कि I have a tool which holds every one of these things? Wouldn't that be great? Right? So there is one thing which is called query selector, right? So let me comment these out quickly. And I'm gonna give you guys let select, or I should name them better, right? So let's create variables. Again, let's go with header only, and this one is gonna get called document dot query selector, right? Now there are two things. Let me just write them quickly. So let's name it 2, and this one will be called document dot query selector all. What do you guys think? Will there be any difference between these two? इसमें और इसमें? Okay, let's try to understand that, right? Let me just comment this one out. I'm just writing it so that you guys know there is something that is called query selector all also. ठीक, query selector में you have to do nothing, but इतना बड़ा लिखने के बजाय you have to create a string, of course, but in here you'll just place whatever you want to write. So let's say you want to go with ID, right? So you'll just go and write hash and that ID, right? So just how you access things in your style tag. I'm just gonna put this ID, and if I go and do console.log of this header, and let's see what I'm gonna get. So if I go in here, am I getting this header element? Right? तो मुझे उतना बड़ा लिखना नहीं पड़ रहा है, get element by ID and all. ठीक? All right. So let's say if I try to let me just copy this and I'll comment this one out. ठीक? So let's just say if I want to access class, how will I do that? Class कैसे करूँगा? Everyone, how can I access a class? Given that I have to access this section H1. Guys, is this visible? ये size visible है because it's getting a bit clumsy जब मैं ऊपर नीचे कर रहा हूँ. Everyone, is this fine? ठीक है, I'll keep it here only. So how can I access section H1? How do we normally access a class? By doing a dot, right? So I'll just do that. I'll do section and I'll be accessing the H1s in that, right? Now, if I go back and if I just do a quick refresh, what am I getting? I'm still getting the H1, right? Just the first one. Take, so that's the difference between your query selector and query selector all. Take, so let me just write it here quick. So once you do a query selector, no, you are gonna just get, let's say if you're writing an ID, right? So we all know ID is gonna be unique. IDs are unique, right? So only one element is gonna have ID. सिर्फ एक ही element के पास वो ID होगा. So it's always gonna give that single element. But let's say I'm writing class name or rather tag name. Is that thing gonna give way to multiple different elements? Right? So when there are multiple elements, na, it's always better to go with query selector all. क्योंकि what query selector does is it accesses the node list and just returns the very first element, right? Even though it's accessing the node list, right? Section H1 may it has 3 different elements. It's gonna access those elements, but it's gonna just return the very first element, right? Whereas if you go and write query selector all, and if you do console.log header 2, you will see that we are accessing all the node list. Clear? We're accessing all 3 of them. So is the difference between query selector and query selector all clear? right? I'll repeat it once again. So let's say you are going for, I mean, you are using a universal type of thing, which is basically query selector, right? Uske andar, first thing first, if you're writing an ID, do multiple elements have same ID? Multiple elements के पास same ID होता है क्या? No. So अगर हम ID डाल रहे हैं, it's always gonna return us one value, सिर्फ एक value देगा. So that's fine. That's fine by us, right? But let's say if I'm writing class name and tag name, can multiple different elements have same class name या फिर tag? Multiple elements के पास same tag या class name हो सकता है? Right? Right? Class name can be same in multiple different elements. Yes, Pawan? Class name or tag? We just did that. We gave different elements, same class. Remember the property of class, right? Okay. So if we try to give something which can be possible, which has a possibility of being a node list, right? We already know by our DOM ka concept that if there are multiple different things with same property, they're going to be given to us in form of an array, right? So if you write something in query selector which has multiple different things, it's just going to give you the very first value. जो सबसे पहला value है ना, so let's say if I'm trying to access these three different classes, right? Section H1, section H1 and section H1, different elements है but same class है. So this thing is gonna be created itself into an array, right? Of heading 1, heading 2 and heading 3, right? It's going to be converted into an array of these multiple headings, and query selector kya karega? It's just going to pick this first heading and return you guys. All right. But if you go for query selector all, it's going to give you all the data. Okay. It's going to return you that entire array. Clear? Abhi samajh aata hai? What's the difference between query selector and query selector all? All right. ठीक है. तो you can always go and use this query selector all. बाकी कुछ use करने की जरूरत नहीं है. So let's say if I'm writing this ID, right? This header ID. So if I go and put it in here, I'm still gonna access that, right? But in form of an array. And if I want to access it, I'm just gonna write a 0 after it. जिस तरीके से we access index. Clear? Everyone clear है? So that Swiss knife which I was talking about, it's this one, query selector all, right? So don't you think it's gonna decrease your workload way too much? Itne sare, rather than just write these 2 lines and you're done. है ना? Yes, Jyoti, correct. So now let's say this header is an array which is this, right? Let's say if I'm accessing all the H1 tags, I can go and write tag name also, right? So I'm just writing H1. So I'm gonna get a node list of 3 elements, जो 3 different H1s है, right? And if I want to access this third one, how can I access that? The third element, I'll write this, and in this I'll do header2 dot length -1. Remember? And this thing is gonna give us the very last element. If I go, I'm getting that very last element. Clear? Clear? So by now we have learned how can we at least point out different tags by our JavaScript. Can we all now at least point to that thing? So if I want to point at this section, I can do that. Everyone? Okay, so that's great. I think we should have a break here because bit overflow might be there. Okay, so have a 5-minute break and then we'll try to update few things, right? So चलो आके बताता हूँ मैं क्या करने का. ठीक, basically we'll be creating these buttons, right? So I'm gonna create a button and button के click पे I should be able to update this heading 3. Sounds interesting, right? So we'll do it shortly. Have a break of 5 minutes and then get back. Everyone back at 4, 9, 4. Right, guys, everyone back? आगे सब on in chat if you are back. सीपी प्लेटफॉर्म को कैसे लॉग इन करें प्लीज आज के और आइए, ठीक है। क्लास में वैसे ही काफी कुछ कर रहे हैं, अगर मैं सीपी बैठाने बैठा तो अगले 20 मिनट लग जाएंगे, ठीक है। एक बार आइए से पूछो। ऑलराइट गाइस, हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू थिंक एवरीथिंग इज ओवरफ्लोइंग टुडे? थोड़ा ज्यादा ही हो गया। समराइज डॉट जेएस, लेट्स कॉल इट दैट। एंड मैं एक बार दिखाता हूँ आपको हमने क्या क्या कवर किया है, ठीक है। सो वी स्टार्टेड विद डॉम, राइट। तो व्हाट डू यू गाइस थिंक डॉम इज कॉल्ड? हाँ, वो चीज हमेशा होती है, राइट। रिमेंबर व्हेन आई स्टार्टेड टीचिंग गाइस नेस्टेड लूप, याद है कितना टफ लग रहा था? बट देन वर यू नॉट क्रिएटिंग दोज पैटर्न्स, राइट? सो थोड़ा सा जस्ट बेयर विद मी, I'll ease everything out. Take quickly document object model, right? Layman language में if I want to say it, can I say कि browser is converting my HTML document into an iteratable object? Can I just say this in layman language? ठीक, अभी सब दिमाग के अंदर आ जाएगा, चिंता मत करो, चिंता मत। ठीक, तो दिस इज द फर्स्ट लाइन दैट वी लर्न। उसके बाद वी लर्न दैट इन DOM the elements are also called, what are they called guys? एलिमेंट्स को और क्या बोलते हैं? रिमेंबर वी वर मेकिंग सर्कल्स एंड ऑल, सर्कल बना रहे थे एंड वी वर कॉलिंग थिंग्स, उन लोगों को कुछ नेम कॉलिंग कर रहे थे हम लोग। दिस थिंग, this thing, nodes, right. So we were calling them nodes, right. And their children, let's go with one को भी हमने देखा कि we are getting it as node list, so can I call them node lists? Their childrens were being called node lists, right. Is this there? Take, and then we learned few ways to access these elements or nodes, right? First, let's mention tough ways. Tough ways है, but we still need to know them, right? पता होना चाहिए, right? To write words, we should know at least ABCD क्या होते हैं. Then only we can write dog, cat, and everything, right? So let's say if I want to access an ID, how can I do that? What was the object that we were accessing? Very first, जो मेन ऑब्जेक्ट था, जो कि डॉम ने पूरा अपने HTML को कन्वर्ट किया था, व्हाट वाज दैट कॉल्ड? बहुत इजी सा नाम था, जस्ट डॉम का सबसे पहला वर्ड डॉक्यूमेंट, राइट। एंड वी वर डूइंग गेट, वाज इट एलिमेंट्स और एलिमेंट? हमें मल्टीपल एलिमेंट मिल रहे थे और जस्ट वन एलिमेंट, राइट। तो इट वाज गेट एलिमेंट, माय बैड, गेट एलिमेंट by id, it was following camel case and it was a method, so parenthesis, and इसके अंदर we were just putting IDs। याद आ गया? ठीक। उसके बाद नेक्स्ट लाइन में क्या है? हाउ कैन आई एक्सेस क्लास? सो बेसिकली डॉक्यूमेंट डॉट गेट एलिमेंट बाय क्लास नेम, एंड दिस थिंग वाज क्लास, जो भी क्लास का नाम है। एवरीवन, ठीक। उसके बाद फाइनली हमने कुछ देखा जिसको बोलते थे टैग सेलेक्टर, राइट। टैग याद है? टैग, आई कैन डू डॉक्यूमेंट डॉट गेट एलिमेंट बाय टैग नेम, राइट। एंड इसके अंदर वॉट एवर टैग यू वांट टू पुट, ठीक। सो दिस स्टफ वाज टफ वन, राइट। इसमें एक और जोड़ ही देता हूँ, what was that? Query one, remember document dot query selector, let's keep it on easy वाले में, right, and easy ways, ठीक। इसके अंदर क्या कहते हैं? so we had query, or let's call it one, and this thing had document dot query selector, right? And isme were we just mentioning the name or we have to mention the type also, right? Yes, very good, very good. Kisne kiya? Harshit, nice observation, guys. Should it be get element by class name and get element by tag name, or should it be elements? Elements, right? We were getting multiple elements, so elements. Very good. ठीक, अभी यहाँ पे should we mention the type also? तो अगर हम ID search कर रहे हैं, we should be mentioning this. If we are searching for class, we should be mentioning this. और tag search कर रहे हैं, तो just go for the tag name because that's how it works. ठीक, even you can do this inside this. So let's say you have a div के अंदर you have a class, and class के अंदर you have a certain ID. This also works, people. You can try it. It works. Right? Right? And there was one more much easy way of writing things, which was document dot query selector all, right? And I'm just going to copy this because it was just this way. Kuch naya nahi tha, right? So what was the difference between these two? Query 1 और query 2 के बीच में, query selector and query selector all के बीच में? Can I write this will return only single element or the very first element if node list is there, right? Whereas can I write this will return the entire node list? Can I say this, people? Can I say this? Can I say this? And trust me, बस इतना ही कवर किया अब तक लेक्चर में. Is it too much? काफी ज्यादा है क्या? राइट, अभी तो हमने बस पॉइंट किया है, राइट? तो इतनी चीजें याद है, इजी है. आई जस्ट समराइज्ड इट एवरीथिंग एंड यू हैव अ सर्टेन नोट आल्सो. ठीक, आगे बढ़े, आगे बढ़े. लेट्स ट्राई टू मॉडिफाई थिंग्स. ठीक, या ये ट्रेलर है, अभी पिक्चर बाकी है और काफी ज्यादा बाकी है. ठीक, अभी तो कुछ भी नहीं हुआ. ठीक है, सो लेट्स अंडरस्टैंड हाउ वी कैन अपडेट आवर डॉम. ठीक है, एंड मे बी दीज मेनी थिंग्स आर थ्रोइंग यू ऑफ, सो मैं इनको कमेंट ही कर देता हूँ. एंड आई मीन इफ आई थ्रो देम आउट, इनको बाहर रखता हूँ, सो कैसे करें? लेट्स कीप इट देयर ओनली, दीज आर कमेंटेड, सो शुड नॉट बी एन इशू. चलो, सो वन थिंग. अच्छा, let's keep JS in different file, right? So let's segregate JS files. So how can we do that? Remember, we created separate styles for our elements in separate pages. याद है? याद है? Everyone, we can do that for script tag also, right? So I have created an index.js file. अभी क्या करना है? Just go to script tag. I'm gonna put everything outside so you can access it later also. ठीक है, तो इसके नीचे है, you can access it. And I hope this does not gives an error. चलो, कोई नहीं. And script को all you have to do is you have to write a src and you have to just give it a reference of this index.js. ठीक है, so now if I do let's try to access. Let me just open it in this way, and इसमें let's keep index.js, right? ठीक है, so now we have a nice little view. ठीक, so how can I access this h1? I can write let header 1 equals to document dot query selector all, and in this I'm writing dot section h1, right? Is it gonna give us an entire node list? Entire node list. Take, how can I access the very first element of that node list? Indexing, right? So let first element equals to header 1 का zeroth element. Am I going to access that very first element, this one? So let me quickly console.log first element. Let's go. Are we getting the very first element? Very first element. And what's this thing? Why is it giving ये क्या हुआ? ठीक है. So ये रहा हमारा script, right? My bad. I'm doing JavaScript comment on HTML. That's why it was giving me. Check. Sorry. So I'm gonna get just the very first element, right? And how can I access the under wala text? How can I access the inner text? By doing a dot inner text, right? So if I go back, am I accessing the inner text? Right? Acha, you guys tell me, I have an object, let object equals to key1 and it has a value 1. If I want to update this value 1, how can I do that? Can I do object dot key1 and equals to value 2? Will it update that value? Do you guys think that? Take so by that logic, given that this is an object, how can I update this inner text? If I do first element equals to heading new, should I be able to update it? Am I updating it? Right? I'm printing the first element. Am I updating it? Right? But वो DOM में नहीं हो रहा है. Why? Because we are not telling DOM to update it for now. ठीक? ठीक? So how can we tell DOM from our side to update things? कैसे कह सकते हैं? Right? Remember the remote example. कहाँ गया remote हमारा? Remote and TV. Right? Are we able to find the button now? Can we access the elements? Should we press the button? Yes, Banvi. Yeah. Should we press the button? To press this button, we have something in DOM which are called events. Right? उनको events बोलते हैं. So let me just create it in here. We have something which is called events. Right? Event का मतलब क्या होता है? Just in layman language, English, Hindi, anything. What do you mean by an event? Program, okay. Okay. I'm visiting a website, right? Batana, what do you expect an event in there? I'm watching this image. I'm clicking on this button. What can be event? Was that button click can be called an event? Right? So clicking a button, like clicking on this input, typing something, and then doing an enter, these things are called events in JS. Right? How can we add events? Let's go back to index.html and let's add a button in it. Right? So यहाँ पे एक button बनाते हैं and let's call it press me. ठीक, अभी तक we know how we can create buttons and all. People, button बनाना आता है सबको. But we never got to see कि how we can make this button work. Right? आप लोग बताओगे from what property of JS can I use कि I can call something from here. I'm gonna write a code in this tag which is gonna call something and I want some sort of piece of code to run in here. Sounds familiar? I want to call something from this button and some piece of code should run in our JS file. Okay. 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 Acha, let's say I have a function which says add, and this thing is basically printing console.log 3 plus 2, right? So this is a block of code, and it's gonna run only when I'm gonna call it. Yes, no, anything? Right? So can I create a function, and maybe if I somehow able to call this function inside this button, will I be able to run this function on my command, on command of that button? Okay, so let me show you how you can add an event. All you have to do is button mein jao, and you have to add an attribute which is called on click, right? You're saying basically when I'm clicking on this button, I want a function to run. Let's call that function handle click, and I'm going to call that function, right? So let's come in here. Let's come in here and write a function which is called handle click. And in here, I'm just going to do a console.log getting click, right? Let's go back and let's click at this button. Is it getting clicked? Am I calling the function at buttons click? Button की command पे am I calling? Acha, watch it again. If I click on this button, that's happening. Right? Right? So basically, I have added an event in it. अब उस event को let's use it and try to update this DOM. So let me just get this. And whenever I'm clicking on this button, no, I should be updating this first element ka value with our heading name. So let's try to do that. If I click on it, I think the access error is there. Let's go back. Header one. Okay, let me try to access the header one in here itself. So header one and 0 dot inner text equals to my heading. Okay, let's see. So if I go and click this, yeah, it's getting updated, right? So let's go back, and if I'm clicking it, that heading is getting updated, right? Everyone, समझ आया क्या हुआ? What was I doing? So basically, what I did was I got this header one, which is basically referring to a node list which has these three elements. I created a button, and in that button, I provided an event which is called on click. Whenever you're clicking, you have to call this function. I have written that function, and that function is basically accessing the very first element and it's updating it. Check. So whenever I'm clicking on it, it's basically updating it to new heading. Right? But how can I go back? How can I go back? वापस H1 पे कैसे करूंगा? Any guesses? Any ideas? I mean, I'm refreshing it, right? Initially, it's heading 1. I'm clicking on this button. It's getting converted into heading new. How can I get it back to heading 1? New event makes sense. Makes sense. Does refreshing a website seems viable, or adding one more button? Right? Do we have a button in here? यहाँ पे to go back and to go forward? Right? Right? So shall we go and add one more button? And let's call it reset button, and let's call on click equals to handle click, but let's call it reset, right? So guys, going forward, just keep in mind we are going to keep some meaningful names, right? So that if we read them, हमें idea लग जाएगी what this button is doing or function क्या run कर रहा है. So let's create one more function, and this will be called handle click, but with a reset, right? And what should be done in here ताकि it gets back to heading 1? Same thing. So I'm going to keep it here, but rather than this, I'm gonna keep the heading 1. Right? Let's go back. If I'm clicking on this one, I'm changing it to heading new. If I click on this one, I'm changing it back to heading new. Heading new, heading 1. Heading new, heading 1. Make sense? Right? And now we are actually manipulating and are able to interact with our HTML web page. ठीक? So इसी बात पे shall we create a counter? एक counter बनाए quickly. All right. Counter क्या करता है? Let's say if I'm pressing it, should I increment? And if I decrease it, should I decrement? Tick. So let's do that. Let's have a HR here so that we have a line, and in here let's create a div, and this div is gonna have a button, and this will be int, and we have let's have a p, right? And this p is initially gonna be 0, and let's have a button. What's going to be different? Right? And let's run some functions. So on click, I'm gonna increment, right? And on click, I'm gonna decrement. Okay, so let's quickly create these two functions. So function, and this is gonna be called increment. And this thing is gonna be basically accessing our this p. So how can I access the p? Let's give it an ID for our easy sake. So let's call it counter. So I can do let element, or not element, let's call it ELE equals to document dot query selector all, or just go with query selector, and इसके अंदर let's write hash plus counter. So should I be accessing this counter? Right? And उसके अंदर let's have a value. So element dot inner text equals to, let's create a variable, let count equals to 0. So let's keep this as count. Right? Right? And let's do one thing. Let's increase the count plus plus. Take, and let's create a decrement function again, and उसके अंदर just opposite होगा. So decrement, and this one is gonna do count minus minus. Functions are making sense? Functions. So we have a count variable, we are adding it, and we are decreasing it. Take, let's go back and let's check it out. So if I'm increasing it, I'm basically adding these stuff, and if I'm decreasing it, I'm basically decreasing that stuff. Take, so you have a simple basic counter for yourself. Right? And if you want, you can go and add CSS to it. People, is events making sense? Events may we have learned at least one event for now, which is on click. Event sense बना रहा है सबको? Right? Yes. So add to cart program can be created easily, but let's progress slowly. ठीक है? तो just like on click, we have one more event which is basically called on change, right? And this is small only. Let's keep it small only. Next.html on change कहाँ पे आ सकता है? Let's create a select tag. So let's have a HR again. Select tag याद है everyone? Select tag, people. Select. Sir, how is event showing up on HTML but the previous code were shown on console? So we are basically accessing these events, and we are accessing those specific element, and we are updating them, right? So now we are not just accessing those elements. Remember the CRUD. We are not just accessing those elements. We are actually updating them by use of something which is called events. For now, we have learned just one event, which is called onClick. All right. Clear? Check. Right? So when we were accessing something, we were printing it on our console. Now we have to actually interact with DOM, right? We have to create websites. That's why we are using events and we are accessing our websites, updating our websites. ठीक, all right. और क्या कर सकते हैं? Let's talk about select real quick. ठीक, so let's create a select tag. Select tag, everyone remember select tag. Select tag क्या करता था? It has options, right? So let's say I have departments in it, right? So again option, I mean I'm just gonna show you how to access it. इसको update कैसे करें, we'll learn it later. For now let's show you how to access this. So let's say I'm doing in here, let's have tech, and in another option let's have HR, and in another option let's have marketing, right? So let's go back and let's see what it does. Remember select tag, ध्यान आ गया, right? Drop down list, correct. So if I'm clicking on something, I should be able to console whatever I have clicked on, right? So if I've clicked on tech, I should be able to print tech. If I've clicked on HR, I should be able to console HR. Sounds like something event should handle, right? So that event, as I told you guys, is called on change, right? So on change, I'm gonna add an event which is gonna basically handle select, right? Why is it named on change? Because are we clicking on something and changing it? Are we changing it? Right? That's why it's called on change. ठीक, now let's go back. अभी एक छोटी सी चीज मेरे को समझानी है, which is called passing arguments or parameters. Right? Do you guys remember functions had a property which was called arguments pass करना or receive something as parameters? Remember when we used to do कहाँ गया वो function? This one. So were we doing this, or should we add a comma b and we should be getting that a comma b from somewhere? Right? So given that this thing is also in function, we can pass something in it, and usually we are going to pass that event only, right? So what's this event? This event is on change, and we are going to get this event, right? Let me show you what this event actually holds, right? So let me just call that handle select, right? And इसके अंदर let's access this event as an e, right? We can name parameter anything, our choice. Remember, argument भले ही कुछ भी pass हो, we can keep it inside any parameter that we can name. Guys, yes, no, anything? I mean, now only 3-4 people are responding. ठीक. So let's say if I'm doing console.log e in here, ये थोड़ा vague होगा. It's gonna give you a vague response, but I'll show you. If I go and do techno, are we getting that event? What is it? Is that event an object? Is that event an object, right? So do you guys remember one statement that I told you guys few days before? Ki going forward in JavaScript, everything is gonna be object only. Take, are we getting objects only in everything? Okay. So this object has a target, right? वो target क्या है? Is it select, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do e.target and let's see what we are basically printing. उस key में है क्या? So if I go and basically click on tech, am I getting the specific thing that I clicked on? ये select पूरा मिल रहा है? Now what I'll do is I'll go back and give this options some value, right? So let me give this one. Start with this one. This a value of x. Let's give this a value of HRs, and let's give this a value of marketings. Right now, if I go in here target, I should be able to access the values also. Right, so if I write e.target.value, no, if I go and print on tech, I'm getting the value that I've given. If I'm printing on HR, I'm getting that HR value that I've given. If I'm printing on marketing, I'm getting that marketing value. ठीक, so basically we gave a value to our tag and we got that event. We did a target कि वो event आया कहाँ से है? It was coming from this select tag and we were printing the value of that target. Make sense? Make sense? Everyone? Is this thing making sense or not? Right? So that's how you get an event. That's how you can get a target and that's how you can get a value from that target. ठीक है, ये चीज we are going to use it in inputs also. ठीक, for now इतना काफी है. Right? How can we get it in console and all? Repeat it once again. All right. So we were learning about events. We learned about something which is called on click. Agla event I taught you guys was on change. Basically, when something changes, so let's say changing a select, right? Changing a select tag or writing something in input. Input बाद में लेंगे. For now, changing a select tag is a on change event. We were running a function in it and we were passing the event as a parameter argument, right? What was this event? Basically, this entire select tag was targeting an event. So if I go and do a E of this, or rather E dot target, what I'm gonna get is where was this event triggered? Event trigger कहाँ से हुआ था? So if I go back and if I press that any of these, I'm gonna get this entire select tag. So my DOM knows कि this select tag में से something triggered this event. How can I access that something? I'll do a target dot value, right? I have given it a value. By default, it's empty string, right? So if you don't write anything, you would either get empty string or undefined. Okay, so if I'm clicking on that, I'm getting that value. All right, it's nothing but we are accessing that event. उस event के अंदर we have a property which is called target, and that target has one more key which is called value. That's all. What is the work of target? Target is giving us an idea कि we have an event. Where is it getting triggered? So it's getting triggered in select. All right. So that target is giving you an idea कि which option was selected. And if you want to print the value of that option, you will do dot value. So what if there are multiple on change? Yeah, that's why we are adding target, right? So that we know ki where was this thing happening. Let's say I have one more select tag, right? And this one is gonna have option 1, and just copy this. I'm gonna keep this as option. Oh, into let's click 2 more, and the values let's go with 2, and इसके लिए let's go with 3, and either let's place 2 and take one. Right now, let's say I am adding one more on changing, right? So I have handle select 2, and it's gonna be passing an event, right? And let me create a function, and this will have handle select, but the second one, and it's gonna get an event, right? Now, in a single document, we have written 2 different events, right? One is on change and the other one is also on change. So if I do a event, my DOM would know कि we have a event. But if you need to access कि where this event was triggered, you'll have to do a e.target. Right? So log e.target. Now this is gonna give me a brief idea कि where this event was triggered. So if I go back and if I click on this one, no, it's gonna give me the select tag for the second part. Right? This handle select 2. That's the use of target. It's gonna give you where it was triggered, where that event was triggered. All right. Yeah, it will give us full select tag. It's going to give us the element where that event was triggered. I mean, there is a bit more complex thing. There is something which is called event bubbling and all happening. That does not make any sense for now. Abhi ke liye just keep in mind if you do e.target, it's going to give you an entire target of the node where things happen, right? So jo node tha, that was select, right? Uske andar we have a node list of options. To access those options, you'll do a value and you'll get a specific value where that option was triggered. Make sense? If we have same function name, it will give error. Of course, it's going to give an error. right? You can't have similar file names. You can't have similar folder names. Just like that, you should not have similar function names, right? Or else the language is going to get confused which piece of code you want to trigger. Clear, people? Any doubts in this thing till now? दो इवेंट सीखे, ऑन चेन एंड ऑन क्लिक. Yes, yes, Jyoti, it's going to call you an event. Can we target different value? But we can also use current. आगे चल के बताऊंगा वो. ठीक है? That thing comes into creation phase. जब हम खुद से क्रिएट करेंगे. ठीक, अभी के लिए we just trying to update जो भी DOM पे है, just using that to update something. Right? Can we target different value? I mean, by doing target dot value, you will only access the element जहां पे आपने ट्रिगर किया है उस इवेंट. राइट? ठीक है. So, right, I mean, we can stop it here. Let's do few exercise itself. ठीक, थोड़े से exercise करते हैं. So, do we know what does toggling means? Toggling मतलब क्या होता है? Toggle करना का मतलब क्या होता है? अच्छा, have you visited websites in which we have light mode and dark mode? Right? I think I know a website. Redux वाले में था शायद. हाँ, so you see there is this button. If I click on this, no, it's gonna convert this thing into dark mode. But इस पे फिर से click करूंगा तो I am getting light mode. I don't have two different buttons. एक ही button is toggling that thing. एक ही button से toggle कर पा रहे हैं. Isn't this cool? What if we can actually create that toggle? Any idea how we can do that? Let's say I have a h2 tag and it has a heading 2. Take, and I have a button which is basically called toggle, right? Toggler. And if I on, is it going to be on change or is it going to be on click? Button है, it's going to be on click, right? On click, I want to handle my toggle, right? And I'm going to call this. So let's go back, and in here, let's get this h2 element. So let me give it an ID, and this is toggle element. So how can I access this one, people? How can I access this? Basically, again, document dot single element. So should we go with query selector all or query selector? We just have to access a single element. People, query selector, you can just write QS, right? पूरा query selector लिखने का जरूरत नहीं. But I need answers. Query selector, right? That would make more sense. So let's write query selector, and inside this, I'm gonna write that toggle element, right? Take it. So we should be accessing this toggle element. If I'm doing toggle element dot inner HTML, I should be inner text. I should be getting that inner text जो भी इसके अंदर लिखा है, which is h2, right? So watch this. Let's say I have a function which is called handle toggle, right? And this function, it does nothing, but it changes let flag equals to false. It's gonna change this false to true if it, let's say if this flag, if it's true, it's gonna convert it into false, right? So flag is equals to false. Else flag is equals to true. Can someone tell me what am I doing in line number 61? Flag is a variable which has a value of false. That's all. बस ये सोचो कि we are doing normal JS. So we have a variable जिसमें I have stored a boolean value false, and in this function which is called handle toggle, I'm basically accessing that flag. If that flag is true, no, I'm converting that flag into false. Or if that flag is false, I'm converting into true. Am I doing that? Is this thing looking complicated? I can write it in if else if it is. No? Okay. So in here, what I'll do is before toggling it, I'll check if flag is true, no. I'm gonna access my toggle element. I'm gonna access toggle element and I'm gonna write something which is called style. अभी क्या होता है? If we access an element, we can write style in it. And after writing style, we can access any style that we want to do in it, right? So let's say I want to change the color in that. So I'm gonna write color is equals to red. Else toggle element dot style. Let me zoom it a bit. Style dot color equals to blue. Can anyone tell me what I'm doing in line number 61? Normal JS, right? If the flag is true, what should be the value of toggle element dot style dot color? If flag is true, red. If it's false, blue, right? Right. So what am I doing in here? I'm basically, let me just go back. Yeah. I'm basically calling a function which is called handle toggle. Is it this function? Everyone, right? And is function mein first in line number 61, what I'm doing is I'm checking current value of flag. What is it? Let's say current value of flag is false. So what should be the color of it? Color of the element? It should be blue, right? And once I have updated the color with blue, I'm basically changing this false into true by line number 63. Make sense? Make sense? Everyone, सबको बना रहे or just 4-5 people? Okay, so let's go and see what it's actually doing. If I click on this, if I reference error cannot access flag before initialization, all right? Flag before initialization. We have this flag. We're doing toggle equals. Okay, let me just quickly console this flag once. So I'll see what the error is. Console.log flag. Right, let's see if we're accessing that flag at all or not. Okay, the error is at accessing the flag and it says cannot access flag before initialization. Right, that's new. Yeah, I can go with if else. Just give me a second. Let me, not sure why I'm not able to access the flag itself. Declare flag inside function. If I'm declaring flag inside function, no, I would not be able to, like, this thing is gonna get reset every time. I need it outside. Might be, sure. Never mind. Let me just change it to var. Right. Okay, we're still accessing it, but it's getting false. I think flag might be a keyword. Let me check. So, scroll back. Declare inside functions, but if I'm gonna declare inside function, you guys see whenever I'm gonna click at this function, right? Let's say I'm declaring it inside this function. तो जब भी मैं इस function में click करूंगा, it's always gonna be false, right? We have to toggle it, right? Pass it as an argument. Again, that won't make sense. I have to store it. Let me just put it out. Okay. take एकदम सबसे top. I have that toggle there. So, I mean, now it should be there. I click on it. So, take it. So, something might be giving an error. That thing is gonna be because of some keyword which is called hoisting. This will be covered in few weeks, but take it. We were getting that error key. We were accessing that toggle before initialization. So what I did was I took everything, I took that toggle and I place it above that entire JS ka whatever I've written. Okay, and now I'm able to access it. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Let me just quickly convert everything into if-else condition. So if this flag is true, right? If that flag is true, what I have to do is I have to toggle element. I have to access the style and I have to access the not this. I have to access the style and I have to do a color and convert it to red, right? Else what I can do is I can do toggle element dot style dot color and I have to convert it to blue. Also, if it's true, I can convert the flag back into false, right? And if it's false, I can convert this flag back into true. And now, वो flag नहीं रहा, we're calling it toggle. So let me just name it toggle. Right? We'll just access this and do a quick control D. Let's call it toggle. Okay, guys, this code is making sense. If else condition at least. Everyone, right? And now we are able to access the toggle itself. So if I click on this toggle, cannot access toggle element before initialization. Okay, then some function might be running infinitely, I guess. Let's keep it there. Okay, let me refresh it again. And if I'm clicking on this toggle, it's getting converted into blue if it's false. And if I'm clicking on it again, it's getting converted into red. Blue, red, blue, red, blue, red, right? So we're toggling it. ठीक, let me give you a brief कि ये जो error आ रहा है वो क्यों आ रहा है. Let me get this and let me put it in. Take, you guys are gonna get this error multiple times because we are dealing with DOM. So if I click on it, it's giving me cannot access toggle element before initialization, right? So my JavaScript basically knows that there is a variable which is called toggle element, but it has not been initialized yet, right? So क्या हो रहा होगा when my code is running from top to bottom ना, when I'm clicking on this event, वो इस event पे जा रहा है, but it's taking time, right? And that taking time may this thing is not getting initialized. So whenever you're getting that error, na, just pick that line of code and put it at the top of your document, right? So that this thing is getting initialized at priority. Take, I'm just giving you a troubleshooting method. Iska pura what is going behind will teach you, right? Either I'll teach you or someone else will teach you. Take, but if you encounter that error, just pick that thing and put it at the top. ठीक है गाइस? ठीक है, सब शांत हो गए फिर से. टॉगल बनाया हमने, मजा नहीं आया, राइट? टॉगल समझ आया कैसे किया? We were basically taking a variable, उसको हमने कोई false या true value दिया, and we are writing a if else condition. If that thing is true, we are basically doing the color as red, and if it's red, we are taking it to blue. ठीक, basically toggling it. ठीक है? Now I have to quickly discuss about one more thing, which is this thing. So that thing is going to be small. So just give me a second. Let's say I have a P and not P, थोड़ा बड़ा चाहिए हमें. So let's take H1 and this is called heading and इसके अंदर let's give a brief description inner elements, inner data H1. ठीक, and let's have a button and this will be update inner data, right? And let's call a function and on click, and this thing is basically send handle inner data, right? So basic stuff. I created a element and I'm like associating a button with it. So let's call this function in here. So function and it's handle inner data, and in this function basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna access this inner data. So let's write id inner data. Let me just initialize it at the top. So let inner data equals to document dot query selector, and we are accessing that inner data, right? So this inner data has this ID. Okay. So abhi iske andar if I do console.log inner data dot inner text, what am I gonna get? People, क्या मिलने वाला है? What am I gonna get? Simple सा code है. Inner data. Basically, I'm accessing the ID with this one. I'm accessing this tag, and इस element के अंदर I'm accessing the inner text. So it's basically heading inner text. Yes. Yes. So I'm gonna go and check my console. If I click on this, I'm getting that heading inner text, right? So for accessing that inner text, na, sirf inner text is not the only property. There are three more different properties. One is text content. The other one is inner text. And there is one more which is called inner HTML, right? These two things in text content and inner text, they're almost same. Let me show you. If I do console.log inner data dot text content, they're almost same. They're gonna print same thing. एक छोटा सा difference है, but for now it does not matter. If I click on it, I'm getting that exact thing, right? But let's say if I write console.log inner data के अंदर inner HTML, can you guys guess कि क्या print करने वाला हूँ? If I go back and if I click on it, I'm basically still printing this, but एक second, एक काम करता हूँ. Let me make this a div rather than h1. इसको मैं एक div tag बना देता हूँ because I'm gonna hold something in it. इसके अंदर let's have this and this. Let's have h1 and that h1 is gonna have inner data text. ठीक. तो अभी हमारे पास एक div है which has some HTML inside it, which is basically h1 with a text. Let's go back. And if I click on it, ऊपर वाले they are giving inner data text, whatever text is inside this div, which is this thing, but that inner HTML is also giving us the HTML that thing is wrapped in. ठीक. ठीक. So just let me know if you guys can see the difference between inner, like these two things are similar, so I'm gonna refer them as one. But can you guys see the difference between these two? Inner text content and inner HTML, right? Why is it necessary? मान लो, if I go and do inner data dot inner text and I'm keeping it as equals to updating inner text, right? If I go and if I click on this button, right? If I click on this button, am I updating that inner text? right? I'm updating that inner text, but I have any control over the HTML? No, right? So how can I have a control over HTML? By writing inner HTML. So if I go and do inner data dot inner HTML equals to, again, we are going to have string, but we can write HTML inside it. So I'm writing updating inner text, right? So if I go back and if I click on this, no, I'm updating that inner text, but with a HTML. All right. So basically, if you're using inner HTML, you can write a HTML inside that string also. But for inner text and text content, you can just access and update that particular text. All right. Right? समझ आ रहा है? So that thing is just last. बस इतना ही था. ठीक? So let me quickly summarize whatever we have learned in last 1 hour again. So we learned about events, right? And we have to trigger this event. So we were learning these two things, which is on click and on change. Achha, there's one more small thing. एक छोटा सा और चीज है. Just give me a second. So where is index.js? Take, there is one more small thing, which is basically let me open, not this one, index.js of project one. Okay. So there's small thing, basically there's one more thing which is called alert, right? So बस उसके बारे में आपको जानना है. It has nothing much. You can call a inbuilt method which is called alert, and इसके अंदर you can pass some message. So I have triggered this alert, right? ये कुछ नहीं करेगा. If you have written alert with a parenthesis और उसके अंदर we have passed some string, if I click on this button, it's going to give me an alert which says I have triggered this alert. ठीक है? It's only there for pop-up. बस एक लाइन था छोटा सा. ठीक? So back to summarizing everything. We learned about two events. One was on click and on change. On click कहाँ कहाँ use कर सकते हैं हम लोग? On click, where can we attach this event? All right. So you can attach it to button. You can attach it to divs. You can attach it to any element that you want, except for the elements which can be changed. कौन से element change हो सकते हैं? So we have select tag. We have input which can be changed. There are few more things which can be changed. ठीक है? But for today, हमने button सीखा है. Right? You guys can go and try adding on click on an image. एक image लगाना and try adding on click on it. All right. So we learned two of these things, which was basically on click and on change. Have we learned anything else? Anything else? Getting the event as arguments. Have we learned that? और इसके अंदर we have learned small thing. Event dot target क्या करता है? Gives us the node where the event was triggered, right? And इसके बाद there was one more escalation which was target dot value. And ये क्या देता है? Gives the specific child which triggered. Take, and one small thing that was alert your message. ठीक, इतना सा हमने कवर किया. Right people? ठीक, so we did learn HTML, we did learn JS, and today we started merging them both. तो कौन से concept we have merged till now? HTML entirely is there. We learned that document is an object. So we are creating that document as an object. We can call functions by doing something which were called events, right? So इसके अंदर you can write function name and you're good to go. ठीक है, guys, clear? Can I get screenshot of this page? I'll share this project folder only. ये पूरा folder ही share कर दूंगा, right? So you'll have access to everything. ठीक है, I'll share it just in 10 minutes after this ends, right? ठीक है. All right. Any doubts, people? Anything?